Hey everybody, my name is James Elmore, and today I will be talking to you about North Carolina fisheries issues and solutions. So I chose this topic because I grew up fishing in the North Carolina coastal areas, and it's something that really means a lot to me, and I want to really push public outreach so people understand why it's so important to preserve the species that we have here. And one of the reasons why preserving southern flounder and blue crab and other species is important because we need those marine species to help with our food security since our population is still growing, but available land for farming is shrinking. And conservation of these species actually brings in ecotourism. Um, it provides tourist revenue. People come here to fish for specific species. It provides a fun outdoor experience and contributes to the overall health of North Carolina's coastal ecosystems. An example of that would be like southern flounder controlling a smaller species population. And legislation does not work without public support. So that is why science communication is really important because many stakeholders in the fisheries industry are not a scientific audience. So neither southern flounder or blue crab are endemic to North Carolina, which allows for cooperation with other states to help determine best management practices. Some example of outside agencies include the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Association, or NOAA, and the Fishery Management Councils created by the Magnuson Fishery Conservation and Management Act, which are very helpful in providing uh, guidance to help create legislation. And speaking of the Fishery Management Councils, North Carolina actually falls into two. So south of Cape Hatteras, which is the majority of the coastline, falls under the South Atlantic Management Council. And anywhere north of Cape Hatteras, which is a very small chunk of coastline, actually falls into the Mid-Atlantic Council. So southern flounder are very popular among sport fishermen. Some even consider it to be the most sought after species in the state. Both recreational and commercial fishermen are critical, however, of the flounder season being only about 1 month each year. And some even have a distrust for the North Carolina Department of Marine Fisheries and similar organizations that create legislation. However, a loss of roughly 1,000 metric tons of annual commercial flounder catch between the 1990s and 2010s has caused concern among fisheries scientists and led to stricter legislation. The current goal of the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries is to return the southern flounder to a sustainable population by 2029. So blue crab are a very productive species for commercial fishermen. They're actually the most profitable commercial marine species in North Carolina. In 2017 alone, there were 51,393 documented commercial crabbing trips, which is crazy for just 1 year. Um, and an example I want to look at with blue crabs is the Chesapeake Bay, which is a pretty similar ecosystem to North Carolina Sounds. And they saw an 18% decrease in blue crab population in the Chesapeake Bay. This was recorded just between 2017 and 2018. So an 18% decrease in population in 1 year is pretty significant. And similarly here in North Carolina, a decrease of nearly 15 million pounds of commercial blue crab catch was recorded between 2015 and 2017. So this has sparked a need for stricter legislation regarding the blue crab fishery. So public support is critical when creating legislation and best management practices. Understanding sociology can be a really helpful tool to better understand people's attitudes and how to communicate with diverse audiences. And since anyone can produce content on the internet, the general public may face greater difficulty when determining which sources are credible and trustworthy. But some general guidelines regarding science communication include knowing your audience, identifying main messages, choose communication tactics such as whether you're going to make a social media post or a blog, something like that, and taking note of communication methods that appear to be effective. For example, a marine biologist could use the examples I just said to present scientific findings regarding flounder populations to a general non-scientific audience, which would usually be legislators and even commercial fishermen. So a decrease in roughly 3.6 million pounds of commercial catch in North Carolina from the 1990s to today has sparked concern. And since 1981, there's been increased recreational landings of flounder each year. So flounder are pretty well targeted by both commercial and recreational fishermen. A variety of harvest methods can make regulating catch difficult. Fishermen use anchored gill nets, pound nets, gigs, and traditional hook and line gear to harvest flounder, which can produce a greater difficulty in creating legislation. And the variety of North Carolina's many ecosystems can create difficulty when predicting population trends and creating legislation. It's predicted that variations in population demographics could create variations in harvest rates depending on specific locations. So, blue crabs are very valuable to commercial fishermen, with the North Carolina annual commercial catch being valued at about $18.2 million per year. Since the fishery is so valuable, this is one of the reasons why commercial fishermen typically do not respond well to new harvest limits or regulations. But the successful spawning is important in rebounding the blue crab population. It can be difficult to predict spawning trends, however, since they can differ depending on different mini ecosystems. For example, the Sound by Wrightsville Beach is technically a different mini ecosystem compared to Carolina Beach or Curry Beach. There's small differences in those areas that are enough to cause differences in blue crab spawning habits. So although spawning females must be released from crab pots, studies show that egg damage occurs in over 45% of females that are released from crab pots. So many scientists are not specifically trained in communicating science to the general public. Scientists may communicate with bias, even unknowingly, which can lead to misunderstanding and even conflict. And in the United States, surveys show that roughly 43% of Democrats have a great level of confidence in scientists, while only 27% of Republicans have the same level of confidence, which is why communicating in a way that doesn't polarize your audience is very important, although that can be difficult. So in the fisheries industry, stakeholders that scientists must communicate with are often legislators, funders, and commercial or recreational fishermen. And these stakeholders are often not a scientific audience. So communication must be adjusted to suit a general audience. So according to the North Carolina Division of Marine Fisheries, a 52% minimum reduction rate of flounder harvest is needed to recover the species from an overfished status in 10 years. And the effectiveness of the new 2019 flounder regulations is currently unknown to the public. However, there's reason to believe that legislation will have a positive impact on flounder populations. So North Carolina has created legislation to better protect the spawning of blue crabs. A stricter close season, a 5-inch minimum size limit for female crabs, and no possession of juvenile crabs is part of this legislation. And the Chesapeake Bay has seen the blue crab population begin to rebound after recent legislation. And this could be an example for North Carolina to follow. And again, it gives reason to believe that North Carolina can control their blue crab population and hopefully rebound that fish stock. So following general communication guidelines is important. such as knowing your audience, identifying key points, avoiding bias. And online science communication courses are actually available to scientists, sometimes for free. And organizations such as the North Carolina Fisheries Association aim to bridge the gap between scientists and commercial fishermen. This organization was actually created by commercial fishermen, and science is also the foundation of this organization, which is pretty cool to tie both of them together. And the North Carolina Department of Environmental Quality, they also have resources on their website for communication. One of those is a web page discussing public relation tips and media policies, which can be useful. So a conclusion, new legislation for both southern flounder and blue crab gives North Carolina a chance to rebound both populations. And using Chesapeake Bay as an example, there's reason to believe that North Carolina's new legislation can be effective. And the better training of scientists in science communication can improve public relations with stakeholders such as legislators, funders, and fishermen. And fortunately, there are online resources that scientists can use to better their science communication. And these are my sources. Thank you very much.